Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be replacing the CVT fluid, dropping the transmission pan, cleaning it, and checking the internal filter, as well as replacing the external transmission filter on this 2014 Nissan Maxima. Now this should fall in line with any 7th gen Maxima, which is 2009 to 2014, so let's get into it now. Alright guys, so we are under the hood here. Now, these 7th gen Maximas did come equipped with a dipstick, which is right here, okay? Now, you can't just pull this thing up, alright? It has a locking tab, which has to be released in order for this to come up, guys. So, I do want to check the fluid. I do want to look at that before we do anything. This is a 2014. It's 2024 at the time of this recording, so this vehicle is 10 years old. The mileage is 101, okay? I don't know the history of this thing. I'm doing this for a friend, but I'll get into reviewing fluid, intervals and all that at the end of this video. But for now, the first thing we want to do is get this tab released so we can check the fluid, okay? All right, guys, so what I have is the angled pick here. I've had success using this on other CVT tabs like this on Nissan. So what you do is there's a little tab in the inner part here, okay? So in the inner side, there's a little tab, and if you can see, I'm pressing it out. I don't know if you can see that clearance. That's me pressing it out. So now that I have it pressed out, let me see if I can put the camera down here, and I should be able to pull this thing straight up with that tab pressed back. It's slowly coming out, guys. It's really fighting me. Jeez, ew, that thing did not want to come out. Got it, guys. All right, guys, this thing actually has fluid on it. We are going to check the fluid correctly. I'm going to review that in a minute, how to accurately check the fluid. But like I said, we did want to get this out because it is a pain. So just initially, we can see that there is fluid on here. I would go out a limb and say it's original. It's pretty dark. It smells like Nissan original NS2 or NS3 fluid. It has a, if you've been around these fluids, they have a scent. Looks like it too, because this is about the color it would be if it was deteriorated and dark. So yes, I would go ahead and say that this is original NS2 fluid, okay? What I want to do is put this back in reverse, guys, okay? So you don't want to put this back in with a locking tab on, because it's just going to lock itself again, and then it's going to be a pain to get back off. So put this on with a 180 turn and put it back that way so you can just easily pull it back out, okay? Now, I'm going to be replacing this fluid as Nissan's factory service manual for this vehicle outlines, okay? So, if we look here, we're going to start with checking the fluid. So, obviously, we see we got some fluid on the dipstick, which is a good sign. Yes, it is dark, but at least there's fluid on there. That's better than nothing at all, or pulling it out and it's dry. So, we're going to go ahead and start with the CVT fluid, checking the CVT fluid from the factory service manual, okay? It says the fluid should be checked with the fluid warmed up to 50 degrees to 80 degrees Celsius, which is about 122 to 176 Fahrenheit. The fluid check procedure is as follows. Okay, first it says check for fluid leakage. I haven't looked underneath of this thing, but just from a quick glance up top and looking down, in here and everything, I don't see any fluid leaking, but we'll address that when the time comes. But it says, with the engine warmed up, drive the vehicle in an urban area when the ambient temperature is 20 degrees Celsius or about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. It takes about 10 minutes for the CVT fluid to warm up to 122 to 176 degrees Fahrenheit. So if the car has been sitting for some hours or sat overnight and the car is cold and you just came out and started it up, you would probably have to drive about 10 minutes if the temperature is roughly 68 degrees outside. Okay, CVT fluid is widely affected by ambient temperature, which is the outdoor temperature. So if it's, like 40 degrees outside, there's a good chance this fluid is going to be that when you come out overnight. 10 degrees outside, the fluid's probably going to be about 10 degrees. So let's say it's 30 degrees, you'd probably want to drive for about 15 minutes. Now, there's also another way to check the fluid if you have a OBD2 scanner that is capable of reading CVT fluid temperature. Okay, you don't have to do that. Obviously, even Nissan gives you the option to check the fluid in that wide range of 122 to 176, and they simply suggest driving it around to warm the fluid up. So this vehicle was just driven an hour here. It's been cooling down for probably about a half an hour. It's still rather warm under here, so the fluid's definitely going to be warm already. So in my opinion, this is probably in that range or close to it. However, I am also going to check the fluid temperature with a OBD2 device. Okay, so just to get this as accurate as possible, I'd like to use a scanner to read the CVT temperature from the computer. If you look at my other CVT fluid video I have for the Altimas, the factory service manual actually recommends you to look at the temperature and, you know, drain it and adjust it according to temperatures. Okay, so yes, you can drive this around, warm the fluid up before checking it. Also, in addition, use a OBD2 scanner to check the CVT fluid, guys. So I'm going to do that now. So there are multiple OBD2 scanners you can use that would read CVT fluid temperature. If you had, like, you know, a high-end OBD2 scanner like a Autel or a Snap-on or something like that, it would be capable of doing it. What I'm going to be using is a Bluetooth BLE Plus device partnered with the car scanner app. Okay, so I used a VPeak BLE Plus scanner in my Altima CVT video. Okay, I actually left that in my girl's Altima just so she has it. If anything ever pops up, she can plug it in and she can tell me what the codes are. I also, in addition, have this is a V-Linker MC Plus BLE Plus Bluetooth device. So you could use the VPeak, you could use something like this. You just need a BLE Plus compatible Bluetooth device for OBD2. You can get these on Amazon, you know, eBay, wherever. You need one of these to partner with the car scanner app in order to read CVT fluid. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and plug this into the OBD2 port. It's going to be right here underneath of the steering wheel. All right, guys, got that plugged in. I'm going to go ahead and turn this to the on position. Okay. And now I can go to my phone and I can pull up the car scanner app and we can check the fluid temperature. And just for reference, there is the mileage. Like I said, I don't think this has ever been changed before. Don't know the history on the car. My friend literally just got it. It's 10 years old, 101,000 miles on it. And like I said, just from the looks of the fluid, looks like it's never been changed. But we're gonna go ahead and pull open the car scanner app here and we'll see what the fluid temperature is. All right, guys, hopefully this is looking okay on the screen here. So first thing you're gonna do is connect the device. All right, so this is looking for either my VPeak or my V-Linker. It is looking for the V-Linker currently, obviously, because that's what we have plugged up. But you could connect in the settings multiple Bluetooth devices and use multiple profiles for different cars on this app. This app is pretty legit. You can read a lot of live data. You can see any OBD2 code. It's pretty good, pretty good. All right, so we're gonna first go to settings. Now you could choose the connection profile. You can choose like what type of car it is. Like for the Altima, it'll say like Altima CV3 2013 plus. You can also choose Maxima in the connection profile, but don't use the Maxima profile here because it does not read the fluid temperature. Okay, so if you're using car scanner app specifically, when you go to the settings and go to connection profile, do not choose Maxima, choose Nissan Consult 3. Consult is Nissan's OBD diagnostic equipment. Basically, it's like their version of, you know, diagnostic. So use that profile Consult 3. All right, so you can see we are connected up here. So now what I'm going to do, we're connected, we got Consult 3. I'm going to go to live data. This shows you everything that you can, you know, look at as far as I mean, multiple things you can look at that the computer brings up, and you can read voltages of different sensors, you know, readings of different sensors, all that stuff. At the very bottom, though, we got the CVT temperature variant 1 and CVT temperature variant 2. I just selected both of them. It doesn't look like the bottom one reads anything. From a few times I've tried this. I did try this before, obviously, to see if it worked before I decided to record this. But as you can see, the variant 1 is getting a reading. It's kind of hard to see. It's at 130. Okay, guys? So we are at 130. Now, like I said, this thing was driven for at least an hour to get here. So obviously the fluid's warm. That's why it's in this range. But if this car sat for, you know, 8-10 hours overnight, it would probably be close to the temperature outside. And right now I think it's about 70 degrees outside. Okay, so if this was cold, probably be around 70 degrees because it's close to the ambient temperature of the outdoor temperature. Now, as you can see, it just slightly dropped the hair, so it's cooling off. So you can see the fluid is slightly dropping in temperature simply because it's cooling off. Now, as it says in the factory service manual, you can drive this for 10 minutes if it's cold. You just need it in a range from 122 to 176, and that's pretty wide range. So really they just want the fluid warm, but I'm going to get super specific since I have the opportunity to do so with the car scanner app. I'm going to get it exactly in between 122 and 176, which would be about 149. So my goal here is to get the CVT temperature at 149. That's where I want to check it at, and I want to also check it when we're done at that temperature to make sure we get a good accurate reading, and we're just keeping the data and the temperature the same across the entire procedure. Okay, so just to keep it easy, we're going to keep it at the same temperature. It makes it a lot easier for reference. So that's what I want to do, guys. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to start this thing up. Now if I start this thing up, should probably start slowly climbing in temperature. Okay, so it might take, I don't know, a few minutes for this to get to that point. I want to see how quickly it'll warm up, because it should just warm up at idle at this point from how close we are to 149. But I'll check back with you guys in a minute and we'll see exactly how much this is warming up, because it's not even been a minute yet. We're already up to 131. Okay guys, so I'll be back with you guys in a minute and we'll see where the temperature's at. All right guys, so since this was already pretty much warmed up, I've let this sit at idle for like 5-6 minutes and we're already at 148. So I didn't even have to drive it in this specific case just because it was pretty much already warmed up. So we were at 148, probably at 149 in any second, guys. So what we're going to do is take it back to the factory service manual. Now, we've got the engine warmed up between 122 and 176. And as I said, I went right in the middle at 149. So then it says park the vehicle on a level surface. So if you got a level driveway, you're good to go. I don't. Mine's kind of on an angle, so I just put a jack under the front of hair just to get it even. So the car's, in my case, on a level surface just from jacking it up a hair. But if you got a level surface, obviously you're good to go. Next step, number 4, apply parking brake firmly. I got the e-brake on, so we're good there. Then it says number 5, with engine at idle, while depressing the brake pedal, move shift selector through the entire shift range. Okay, so I got my foot on the pedal. What we're going to do is go through each gear with about 5-second wait in between each one. So go all the way from drive to neutral to reverse to park. Go throughout the entire range, you know, all the way down, all the way back up, and put it back in park. Now, we're going to go ahead and check the fluid now, because number 6 says pull out the CVT fluid level gauge from the CVT charging pipe after pressing the tab on the CVT fluid level gauge to release a lock. Well, we already released a lock because we're smart, so we don't have to go out there and fight with it for 5 minutes. So we're going to get out of the car here and we'll go ahead and see where our fluid level's at. All right guys, might be hard to tell, but I got the car even just with a hair of jacking on the jack point. So I'm going to go ahead and put the camera down. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the level and we'll see where we're at as far as the fluid level on this gauge at the correct temperature. So let's see. So let's pull this dipstick out, wipe it off, put it back in, and we'll get our reading here. All right, so it looks like we're within spec. I mean, really, this, you know, cross-hatched diamond pattern is within spec. So right now this looks like we're getting about fluid to about that point. So it does look like the fluid's in spec, and we're going to obviously check this after we replace it to make sure it's in spec. But this is a good gauge to start off to see where we're at. Yeah, we're getting fluid pretty much all the way to the, you know, cutout right here. So all right, go ahead and put that back in reverse. Don't let it lock in again. We still have to pull that out a few more times before this job is over. So now we're going to go ahead, turn the car off, and we're going to drain fluid. All right guys, we just checked our fluid at 149 degrees. Okay, so now we got our reading We've got a gauge of where we're at. We're gonna go ahead and drain fluid now. So I got the car jacked up on jack stands. You want it to be as even as possible. Like I said, I do have a slant in my driveway, so with me just putting this car on jack stands in the front, it actually evens it out. So instead of it being like this on a ramp coming down my driveway, when you put it on jack stands, it evens it out. So get it on a flat surface, you can pretty much tell that this thing is even and flat really with the jack stands on it. So with the front end in the air, in my case, I got it even. So car is even. We want to go ahead and get under here. You want to come on the driver's side. The transmission is on the driver's side, and there is our transmission pan right there. So that pan right there with all those lines in it, that is a transmission pan. Okay, so if we come under here and look right there, that hex, that is your actual drain plug. Okay, so we need to crack that loose to drain this fluid. Now that is a hex bit. You could use an Allen key, whatever. It is a hex 10. So I'm going to put a hex 10 on a socket wrench. I have actual socket. That's what I would suggest over Allen key, but you can use what you prefer. But there we go, guys. That is a hex 10. We're gonna go ahead and crack that loose and get that thing free, and we'll start draining the fluid. All right, guys, hex 10. If you can see, I have an aluminum pan here on the ground for protection, and I just have a drain pan underneath of it. Nothing crazy. Just trying to avoid making any messes if you can. All right, so hex 10, I got it on a 3/8 drive. I got an extendable 3/8 drive ratchet, so that should give me a little leverage to crack this thing loose, and she's pretty tight. Oh wow, yeah, this thing is in here. Oh man, yeah guys, this thing is in here. Hold on, I think I'm gonna have to grab out the half drive on this. All right guys, I'm gonna grab the 1/2 inch. Really don't want to go this aggressive here, but gee, this thing is stuck. She does not want to budge. Oh man. Oh man. Not good. See, the thing is with this, I don't want to strip it because it's a hex head. I wish it was not a freaking hex head. You gotta tread really carefully with this, guys. This thing's definitely never been done before because this is not budging. So I'm gonna reevaluate here and then I'll come back in a second. All right guys, I'm stripping the living crap out of this hex head. I would suggest buying a new drain plug. I should have thought of that when I did this. I forgot that these are hexes and not sockets. So I'm really trying to get this thing hammered in. So what you want to do to avoid trying to strip this is get it in perfect, give it a couple even hammer blows. Pray for the best here. This is like my last shot on this, so if I don't get it, I'm screwed. Let's see. Oh, am I turning it? Oh, I am. I got it, guys. Oh man, this thing, whoo, had me nervous, guys. I thought I was about to send that hex to the moon. Get a nice little circle in there. All right, guys. Well, we got it. Oh, jeez. That fluid is dark, guys. Very dark. Smells decent. Alright, guys. You can see that thing is still stuck in there from me hammering it, but that's a good thing. That means I got it. So I'm going to make sure we get that as cleaned up as possible. But we're going to go ahead and let this fluid drain, guys, and then we'll get into the next step. Alright, guys. So I've let this come to a slow drip, okay? So I'm just going to lightly thread the drain plug back in. We are going to replace the O-ring and everything on this when the time comes, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and lightly turn that back in for now. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be dropping the pan. So since it looks like the fluid's never been replaced before, I think it's a good idea to drop the pan, clean the magnets, and you know, just go over everything in there. Dropping the pan, it's really up to you. You don't have to do it. You know, I would do it on a case-by-case basis. Like I said, I'm going to touch base on all that at the end of the video. So if you want to hear my suggestion on intervals, replacing filters, all this good stuff, I'll get into that at the end of the video. But in this particular case, 10-year-old car, 100,000 miles, looks like the fluid has never been replaced. I am going to drop this pan and we're going to see what we got in there. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and get this pan off. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get into dropping the pan, okay? So, if we're looking at the instructions straight from Nissan's factory service manual, they aren't too, detailed. Pretty much, it says, removal and installation, removal. Drain CVT fluid from CVT. Obviously, we've already done that. Remove O-ring from drain plug. We will get into that. And then it says remove oil pan bolts, then remove oil pan, okay? So, no specific order or anything this needs to be done in. They just need to be removed. There are 20 bolts surrounding this, okay? So we got 20 10 mil bolts all around this, holding this oil pan into the CVT, all right? 20 10 mils. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a 10 mil on a 3/8 drive socket wrench, and I'm just gonna crack all these loose, guys. Now, could you use a small impact or something of that nature to get these out? You most certainly can, all right? I prefer, with something like this to tread safely and just crack them loose with the socket wrench, just to be careful. Now, one thing also I do want to know is it says that these are a one-time use and to buy new bolts, okay? I mean, you could do that if it makes you feel better. If you look at forums and, many people who have done this before me, they reuse these bolts. I mean, they don't look like anything fancy. They could be torque to yields. I don't know, man, but we're going to reuse them. And I've reused them on other Nissan applications, and I've never had an issue, guys. So we are going to reuse the bolts. If it makes you feel better, you could buy 20 new bolts as it outlines and recommended by Nissan. So let's go ahead and get the rest of these off. I'm going to crack them all free with a 3/8 drive and a 10 mil, and then I might just fire them out with the impact, just my preference, and then we'll get the oil pan off. All right, so I got all 20 of these loose, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fire these out with the impact, since I broke them all loose and none of them felt trouble. They all felt okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire them all out, but I'm going to leave the 4 corners in here loosely. So I'm going to leave this one, this one, this one, and this one back over here all in. Take the rest out just so we can separate this without making a complete mess once all of them are removed. So we're going to leave these in lightly, and then we'll separate the oil pan from the transmission with these 4 still in, and then we'll drop the oil pan. All right, so we're just going to go around, fire all these out with the impact, and then we'll get this pan dropped. All right, guys, so I got 16 of the 20 removed. The only 4 I have left are the ones here in the corners there, and then we got the one back here in the corner. You can see all the other ones are removed. Now the goal here is to separate the oil pan. It's not going to be fun, could be a tad messy. I'm gonna pull this aluminum pan underneath of it. Now the reason we kept these 4 bolts in place is so we can try to not let the fluid just fall and drop everywhere. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take a pry bar right here in this corner. So I don't know if you can see, there's a little lip here on the corner, and you can go up against the subframe and you can hit it like that. All right, so that was really the easiest way to do it, and then you could see it fell right on our bolts. Okay, so that's why we wanted to do that. We got it separated, literally just had to pry it right here from the corner. That's why that edge is lifted up. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to remove each one of these bolts, and I'm going to try to hold it in place, and we'll lower this down. Okay, so we're trying not to make a mess here. So I'm gonna try to get these 4 bolts out, and then we'll drop this down, and hopefully we won't make a huge mess. All right, guys, I'm pretty much just gonna be supporting this with one hand while removing the bolt with the other, guys. So let's get this thing dropped down. All 4 bolts are disconnected. There are a couple dowel pins, so it's going to be dripping out fluid, of course. Oh, I made a mess. I just spilled it all over the aluminum pan, tipping it over, but it's not that bad. I didn't lose all the oil in the pan, so there's still a good amount of oil in this pan. There is the oil pan dropped. You can see there's a decent amount of fluid in there, so I'm going to pull this pan out from underneath the car, and then we'll start getting stuff cleaned up. All right, guys, so our pan is off. I just dumped the oil that was left over in the pan into my drain pan, and you can see this oil is pretty dark. Definitely looks like original NS2 fluid. So I do believe this is the original fluid. You see how dark it is. And we got probably a little bit more than 5 quarts out now, considering that we dropped the pan, and we are going to lose a little bit more fluid when we do the filter on the side of the transmission, which is the external filter. So definitely suggest at least getting 6 quarts of NS2 in order to ensure you have enough fluid to accurately fill this up and get the fluid level right once you're completed and replace the fluid. Now, if we're looking at this, it's pretty clean, guys. I don't see any really metal shavings anywhere. I mean, there's a little bit of stuff here on the magnets, of course, but it's not a mess, man. It's really not. And we should be able to go ahead and pull these bad boys up here. Yep. 1 and 2. Definitely want to clean those things up. But I mean, guys, they're for 100K. I'm not mad at this, man. It looks pretty good. It's actually pretty clean considering. So yeah, looking good, guys. I don't see a bunch of mess, a bunch of shavings. So really what we need to do here at this point is clean everything up. We're obviously going to be reinstalling the pan. I got a new gasket, so we got to clean the mating surfaces up, both on the transmission itself and on the pan. We'll clean the magnets, get all this cleaned up, and then we'll get this reassembled, guys. Now, before I do that, I will touch base on the filter, the internal filter that is in the transmission pan, guys. So let's go ahead and get under the car real quick. I'll touch base on that, and then we'll get this back together. All right, guys, so inside of the transmission, hooked to the control valve, there is this filter that is surrounded right here. All right, with these 10 mils and this neck right here. Okay, that neck is what sucks up the fluid. All right, so that is a filter. According to Nissan, this filter is non-serviceable. In fact, they go to great extent to even hide this filter. Like, you can't find this filter from Nissan themselves anywhere. Now, I did a good amount of research on this. I put some hours in, and what I came up with is I found one listing on eBay for this filter, and it's the only Nissan part number I found associated with this filter. I don't even know if it's real, but upon looking at it now, comparing it to this filter in the transmission, it looks real. Now, they have the part number here listed at 31728-1XD03. Okay, now if you Google search this part number, or if you search the part number like on a OEM part site like Coulter Parts Center, for example, it does not generate this filter. Okay, so Coulter Parts Center is the parts site where I get all my OEM Nissan parts from, and when you put in 31728-1XD03, comes back with 0 search results. Now, also, just upon searching and looking at other sites, I would put this part number in, and it would bring up the new filter for like the Ultima transmission with NS3 on some other sites, and that's the part number is almost identical. It's 31728-1XF03, but that's not the filter that we're looking at right here. Okay, so it either, when you're searching that OEM part number for this specific filter, it either generates no results or it brings up the newer filter, which isn't this filter. Okay, now, as far as the aftermarket, you can get these filters on Amazon. You can get it from like an AutoZone with a transmission filter kit, but they are not right. All right, now, if we're looking at this from the side, do you see how slim this neck is coming out of it? If we look at various different aftermarket options of this filter, these necks come down way far, like it's almost double the length. And that is a huge problem. And if you do some research, you can see on forums, people have replaced these filters, and then the transmission won't shift because the neck is so long, pins itself up against the transmission filter, and it can't suck up fluid. Okay, so I did find on one forum, and if you know, I saw it and I should have screenshotted it, and of course I spent like an hour trying to find it again, and of course I can't find it. I did find somebody who replaced this filter with an aftermarket, and of course it was too long, but they cut it themselves accordingly. So they probably just took like a Dremel with a cutting wheel and just cut it to the right size. You could do that if you want. Me personally, I'm leaving this alone. Okay, this isn't my car. It looks pretty clean in here. I don't see any, you know, metal shavings or anything that looks really out of place or anything bad. So I'm not messing with this filter. I'm not taking it down. I'm not cleaning it. I'm not messing with it. If you want, you can drop it and you can clean it up if you want to, you know, clean this particular filter up. Now, if I could get the OEM Nissan filter from Nissan, if I could literally search that part number and get that part and it was readily available, I would probably swap it. But since it's not, and all the aftermarket ones, no matter where you get it from, the neck is too long and they don't fit and it will cause the transmission not to shift, I say leave it alone, okay? Like I said, if you want to drop this and clean it, be my guest. This isn't my car, so all I'm getting into is just cleaning the pan and the magnets, and I'm leaving this filter alone. So this internal filter here, that's my 2 cents on it. I put in a ton of research on it. That's what I came up with. So you could take it for what it's worth, and you could do what you feel comfortable with. Not my car. I feel comfortable with leaving this in. Everything else looks good. I'm just going to clean the pan and I'm leaving this filter in, but there's some insight as to the internal filter. All right, guys, so we are back to the pan. I'm going to go ahead and clean this pan up and the magnets. Now, you can use shop towels, paper towels, microfiber. I'm just going to get in here with some brake cleaner, clean this all up, get it real clean, spray it all down. We're going to clean these magnets up. They're kind of stuck here to my aluminum pan, but literally just going to wipe all the debris and gunk and nastiness off of them. And then I'm going to spray them down. We'll clean this up, spray it down, put it all back together, and then we just have to clean the transmission side, and then this is ready for reassembly, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this cleaned up. Brake cleaner, towels, really all you need. So let's get this clean and we'll get into the next step. All right, guys, so I got the pan here, the magnets and the bolts all brake cleanered and wiped down. So I got all this stuff cleaned up. You know, just brake cleanered it, wiped it out with a microfiber, came out pretty good. Now you do want this to dry really well. Make sure it's dry as a bone. And it even says in the factory service manual, make sure all moisture is removed, you know, from the pan before putting it back together. So definitely letting this sit out in the sun just to make sure we got no residual, you know, fluid, brake cleaner, whatever in there, just to get it as best as possible. Now, one thing to finish this off is I'm going to prep this mating surface. You can see there's just a hair, little bit of gasket material and stuff on these edges. What I want to do is take some red Scotch-Brite, okay, and I'm just going to go around the entire edge with this, and I just got a little bit of degreaser in it. You can use brake cleaner, degreaser, whatever you prefer. Just want it a little bit wet, damp, and then you can see it's taking it right off. All right, so that's how I'm going to go around the entire edge of this pan, and then it will be completely prepped and ready for install, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and go around this edge with red Scotch-Brite, pan, and all this will be ready, good to go, ready for installation. All right, guys, I got the mating surface here for the gasket on this pan all squared away. Red Scotch-Brite the entire edge. Now you might see a little bit of oxidation here. It's nothing at all, nothing to be concerned about. It's just a little bit of oxidation. There is no gasket material left behind, and that's what you want to go after. So there was a little bit here like you saw that I was working on. That's what you need to get off. The gasket material itself, I got all of it off here with some red Scotch-Brite. So pan is good to go. I'm going to sit here and let the bolts, the magnets, and the pan marinate in the sun just to make sure it's dry, no moisture. And now we're going to go ahead and get under the car, clean up the mating surface on the transmission itself, and then we'll get this back together, guys. All right, guys, we are back under the car now. We need to get this mating surface here on the transmission itself all squared away. Now, the gasket itself did not come off with the pan. It's actually still here on the transmission, and if you can see, probably maybe around this dowel or something. Around this dowel, let me see. Yeah, you can see it's on there. All right, so let me see if I can get a better angle here. You can see it coming off. So I'm going to try to get under here with a plastic razor blade and get this separated all the way around, and hopefully I can get this thing off in one piece because I don't feel like fighting it and scraping it off all the way around. All right, guys, so let me grab a plastic razor blade. I would suggest having some. They're great for many different automotive application, guys. So plastic razor blades are always your friend when you're doing gaskets and scraping off material and things of that nature. So I'll see if I can get this separated and we'll see where we're at, guys. All right, guys, let's see what we got here. Yeah, I got the plastic razor blade underneath of it, guys. So if you can see, I'm kind of just guiding it around underneath and just pushing it through as I go along. So I'm going to try to go, it's going to be a tight edge right here. Might have to turn it back to the razor blade side, but I'm going to just try to get underneath this entire thing. See how I'm going along the edge with it? All right, she's going. All right, guys, I dropped my blade around that dowel. I did get it off around that dowel just by a light pull. Don't go crazy, just give it a light pull. It's a little tighter over here on this driver's side of the transmission, but this thing's coming, guys. All right, still going. Might get a little tight here around this dowel too. Felt it anyway when I was when I was against it trying to pull it down. Yep, there we go. There we go, guys. We got this off in one shot. Literally just went around the edge with the plastic razor blade and the gasket is off. All right, so good stuff there. So I'm gonna go around this edge with this microfiber real quick. It looks pretty good. I don't see any gasket material. It looks like it just has oxidation. That gasket really came off in one whole shot, but I'm gonna do the same thing I did on the pan. I'm just gonna go around that edge with red Scotch-Brite, and just to get it, you know, as clean as possible. If there's anything, you know, here left over, we'll get it off, but that should be all we need, guys, and this will be good to go. So let me go ahead and grab some red Scotch-Brite. We'll get around this entire edge just as we did on the pan, and that mating surface should be ready for install. All right, guys, just got a little bit of degreaser on this red Scotch-Brite. I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the pan. Just go around the entire edge and just get it as clean as possible. Try to avoid hitting any of the electronics or anything in the transmission. Just don't, you know, like hit that harness all hard with your finger as you're going at this. Just try to stay here on the edge of the pan mating surface and you should be good to go, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and get around this entire edge and we'll see where we're at. All right, guys, mating surface on the transmission is all cleaned up. Same thing as the pan. There's a little bit of oxidation and stuff left, but overall the material is gone. Feels nice and smooth, the red Scotch-Brite, and we are good to go, guys. So old gasket is off, mating surface is cleaned up. This is all but ready to go. Okay, so we just need to grab the pan and the gasket and we'll get this thing back together. All right, guys, back to the transmission pan here. It's been drying out here in the sun, should be ready and good to go. Put the magnets back in their respected locations. So pan is all but prepped. Now, of course, you need a new gasket to go back together. Here is the OEM new gasket for our pan. So as you can see, it is a perfect fit here. This is a OEM Nissan gasket. So as you can see, good to go. Okay, and here is the part number. It is Nissan 31397-1XE0A. Okay, that is the part number for the new gasket. All right, so that is our new gasket. Pan is ready to go, magnets installed. Let's get this thing back together. All right, guys, one last thing we're going to do before we put this pan back in is put the drain plug back in. Okay, I'm just going to loosely tighten it. I am going to torque it to spec once we're done, but if you notice, this does have a O-ring on it. Okay, it has a rubber O-ring, which is basically the washer to prevent this from leaking for the drain plug. Now, you definitely want to replace this, so we're going to go ahead and get this old one off. I'm just going to take this angled pick, I'm going to get behind it, okay, and we're going to pull it off. There we go, old one off, and here is the new one straight from Nissan. As you can see, it's the same thing. It's 31526-1XA01. So that is the OEM rubber washer for a drain plug. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get this thing on. We're just going to get it right back on the body of the drain plug and we'll be good to go. All right, guys, new washer here. Just gonna get it to go over the body of the drain plug, get it right back into the bottom portion there. All right, and it does recommend putting CVT fluid on that. Just, you know, you should always lubricate O-rings anytime you put an O-ring in, no matter what the application is. So I'm just going to put a little bit on my pinky and lubricate it, and we'll get that thing screwed in there finger tight. All right, guys, just a little bit of CVT fluid on that for lubrication. All right, and I'm just going to finger tight this bad boy back in.
I would definitely suggest getting a new drain plug. Like I said, I did not order one in this job, and I surely wish I did, because I definitely chewed up that hex head, but it is what it is. I'm gonna get it right, and if I ever got to get it off again, I'll be able to do so. But definitely, just for a fresh start, buy a drain plug, guys. Wish I had one and I didn't get it, so I'm just finger tightening this in by hand, guys, and then I'll torque it once it's on the car. But there we go, finger tight, and now the pan is ready for install. All right, guys, time to get this thing back together. Okay, so I would recommend going around the edge one more time just to make sure that edge is dry and good to go, ready for installation. So you can use a shop towel or a microfiber, just go around that edge. All right, now you're probably going to have fluid consistently dripping out of that neck there. It's pretty much unavoidable. Also, fluid likes to come right back here. All right, so right where my finger's pointing, you need to make sure you get a microfiber up in there and dry it good. You might have to do it more than one time. So what I'm going to do is drop the gasket onto the pan, and I'm going to mock it up, and then we'll push that pan back up onto the dowels and start threading in finger tight all of our 20 bolts. All right, guys, like I said, got to work quick here. All right, guys, I'm going to put a bolt right here in the corner. That's how I'm going to start this thing off here. Try to get it finger tight here, get it going. All right, I got that in there. I don't think it's right, but nonetheless, it's in. All right, so I'm gonna start grabbing a few more bolts. I'm gonna go caddy corner. Make sure that the gasket goes onto the dowels. So you got your 2 dowel pins. Make sure that the gasket goes over them accordingly. Kind of go caddy corner. So I went to this one here, and then I went to this one here, and now I'm just gonna start finger threading bolts in as fast as I can to get this back up, and then we'll get them finger tight, and then we'll torque them to spec, guys. So let's get this thing in. All right, guys, I got all of these 10 mils here in finger tight. Make sure my dowels are good, make sure everything looks aligned. I tightened all the corners first just to lock it in. Now I'm just going to go one by one and just thread these in by hand with the socket just to get them all but threaded in, and then we're going to torque them to spec, guys. So I'm just going to go around here on the entire body of this pan and just finger tight each 10 mil in, and then we'll get them torqued to spec. All right, guys, we got this pan back up. All 10 mils are secured, finger tight with a socket. Now, if we bring it back to the directions, it does say to, you know, install the pan onto the transaxle case and temporarily tighten the oil pan bolts, which is what we did by hand. Okay, it does say do not reuse the oil pan bolts. I already touched base on that. I'm reusing them. I'm sure some expert in the comments is going to tell me how the CVT is going to fail on the head. Guess it's going to blow up because I reused these 10 mils, but all good. I see no issue. And like I said, if you do your research on forums and actually put in some time, you'll see that other people have done this successfully with reusing these bolts. Okay, now it says tighten the oil pan bolts in a crisscross pattern to the specific torque. Okay, so anytime you don't have a specific diagram, like a torque diagram that has each bolt numbered, you just crisscross the pattern on whatever it is. So in this specific instance, there is no specified torque sequence with the outline diagram. It just recommends to do them in a crisscross pattern. So here is the blowout from Nissan's factory service manual. Okay, now the torque spec for these 10 mil transmission pan bolts is 72 inch-pounds. Okay, 72 inch-pounds. So we're gonna go ahead and go in a crisscross pattern, torque each of these to 72 inch-pounds, and we'll be good to go as far as this pan's concerned, guys. So let's go ahead and get this thing torqued to spec. All right, guys, so what we're going to do is basically just be going diagonal, you know, caddy corner to each opposite bolt. So I'm going to start here in this corner closest to the passenger side, so almost at the center of the car, 72 inch-pounds. I'm going to come up to the front here closest to the driver's side, get this one to 72. Okay, torqued. I'm going to come back to this back one here. So I'm going to come back to this one back here closest to the driver's side on this corner, get this one torqued to spec, torqued, and then we're going to come up to this front one right here closest to the passenger side and get this one torqued to spec, 72. All right, so now I'm going to go to this middle one here in the back And you'll notice probably some of your finger tightness getting a little bit looser now that you're actually pulling it in with torque. So just needed a 1/8 of a turn more with the hand so I can have a good start to this torque. So let me get this one going. Okay, we're going to come up to this one here, second closest from the driver. Okay, come over to this one, got that one. We're going to come back to this corner right next to the drain plug. All right, get this one torqued. All right, come right here, right across from it, torque this one. We're going to go diagonal up to this one. All right, if you can see what I'm doing, guys, I'm just pretty much going with the opposites from each side. So coming back to this side, bouncing back and forth from each side, going diagonal to their opposites. All right, nothing crazy, guys. So I'm gonna finish out crisscross pattern these to 72 inch-pounds and we'll be good to go, guys. All right, guys, so we got all 20 of these transmission pan 10 mils torqued to 72 inch-pounds in a crisscross pattern. Now, I would recommend going back over and checking all 20 of them, make sure they're at 72. And the Nissan factory service manual recommends this as well. It's after the tighten the oil pan bolts in a crisscross pattern to specific torque. It says tighten the oil pan bolts again clockwise to specific torque. So it just wants us to go back around the pan in a clockwise motion, ensuring that these are all 72 inch-pounds. Okay, guys, so I'm just going to do one more round. I'm going to start here in the corner closest to the driver's side, and then we're just going to work our way around and make sure that these are all torqued to spec. All right, so we got all 20 of our 10 mils torqued to 72 inch-pounds. The last thing we're going to do to get this pan finalized is torque the drain plug. Now, the drain plug is 15 foot-pounds. All right, so this is from the Nissan factory service manual. This is the blowout, 15 foot-pounds. Now, I'm actually going to convert it to inch-pounds just for ease with the inch-pound. I think it's a little bit more accurate. When you got low numbers in foot-pounds with big torque wrenches, I just think it makes more sense to convert it into inch-pounds. So 15 foot-pounds is 180 inch-pounds. Okay, so I'm going to be torquing this to 180 inch-pounds or 15 foot-pounds. And this drain plug will be good to go. I'm going to tread very carefully, considering I stripped the living crap out of it when I took it off. It's kind of hard not to do. I don't know why they use these hex heads and applications like this. It's almost like intentional. Like, just use a regular bolt, man. It's unbelievable. But that's torque, guys. We got that to 15 foot-pounds or 180 inch-pounds. So this is all good to go. We have the whole pan squared away, cleaned up, and all ready for new fluid, guys. Now, there's one more thing we're going to do before we replace the fluid and get this all filled back up, and that is replace the external filter. Okay, so before we get into it, I'm going to go ahead and show you where it is. Now, if we come next to the transmission pan, I'll put some light in here. You can see right there, that is a filter for the CVT. That is an external CVT filter. Okay, guys, so what we're going to do is get to that real quick, and then we're going to get that replaced. Then we'll have this job basically done, and it'll just be time to replace the fluid, guys. So we're good to go. Let's get to the driver's side, and we'll get this external filter replaced. All right, guys, so we're going to replace that external transmission filter. Okay, so we are here on the driver's side of the car. We need to remove the wheel in order to access it. Okay, so the lug nuts here are a 21 mil. I just have a 21 here on the impact. As we know, the car is already jacked up, so we're good to go. I'm just going to fire these 21s out with the impact, and then we'll be good to go, guys. I'm going to get all 5 of these out, and then we'll get this wheel off. All right, guys, wheel is off. Now, the filter is right here in this vicinity, so we're going to have to remove this splash guard panel in order to access it. Okay, now this thing is held in with 6 push clips. Now this one is missing a couple. This thing isn't in the best condition, but
I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's a 6th one here on the bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a panel popper and we'll pop out these push clips and get this splash guard right off. All right guys, just got a panel popper here. We're just gonna come in here and get in on these clips, just get behind them and then pop them right out. All right, nothing crazy. Just got to get behind the clip or just regular push clips. All right, so there we go guys. I'm just going to get the other 2 that this one has in there out and we'll be good to go. All right guys, got that last one out. Panel is off. All right, so there is that one that's going to be on the bottom as well. You can see it right there. That should have a clip as well. Like I said, this thing is not in the best condition. It's definitely missing some clips. So now we can see our filter right here guys. All right, so that is the external transmission filter, and just for reference, thanks to forums, this is a pic I found on the forum that somebody cut this filter open and you can clearly see there is a filter inside this. So really this is just like a housing, you know what I mean? So that's just like a aluminum housing that a filter is actually cased in. So this is just a casing around the filter, as you can see. So there we go guys, this is an external CVT filter. I do have the part number from Nissan, so we're going to go ahead and get into getting this thing off and then we'll get it replaced guys. So let's get this thing off. All right, so this external filter here is held in with a few 12 mils, okay? But before we worry about removing it, I do want to remove these hose clamps going to it first, so that way we have the stability of it being in place to get those off accurately. Okay, so as you can see, I got a pan here. You want to put a pan underneath it here because we're probably going to lose some fluid. So get a drain pan underneath it there and we're going to go ahead and get these hose clamps off. All right guys, so I just got some decent sized pliers here. We're just going to go ahead and grab onto the tabs, slide that bad boy back. This one on the top is in a little bit worse position. So what I want to try to do is see if I can spin this bad boy. Yes, I can. Good stuff. All right, so if you take your hand and just spin that, you should be able to spin it to get it in an orientation where it's going to be easier to remove. I'm just going for ease of removal at this point. I'm not trying to shove a small plier up in that angle because they had it at a bad angle. So I'm just using a different tool now. I got some needle noses, so you can use whatever you want guys. I got needle noses. I use the fatter ones on the first one. Whatever works for you, your preference. So we got both of those worked off. Okay, so now we need to work these hoses off. I'm sure they're going to be rubber welded on here, so you just want to take your pliers and lightly start rocking it back and forth to break those hoses free. Like I said, it's probably rubber welded. Hoses that have been on anything for any length of time like to weld themselves to whatever they're on, and it really just needs a little bit of persuasion to free up. All right, so that one seems pretty free. Should be able to spin it off at this point. Yep, she's coming. So I'm just kind of like spinning it, almost like I'm reversing it off, guys, and it's coming off, and there we go. All right, losing a hair of fluid, nothing crazy. So we'll just leave that aimed pretty much at the pan. Now this one here on the top will break free as well. All right, so I'm just gonna get the pliers on it, start rocking her back and forth, breaking up that connection from the rubber to the filter. All right, I think I might have it. Yep, and it's coming off, guys, as you can see. Come on, there we go. We're losing a hair bit of fluid there too, nothing crazy. So I'm just going to let that little bit of residual fluid drip out, and then once it's done dripping all over that filter, we're going to go ahead and remove the filter and get that thing swapped out. All right, pretty much all that fluid is out, guys. So there are 3 12 mil bolts holding this thing in. You got one right here, one right above it, and then there's one here on the bottom side on the left if you're looking directly at it. Okay, so that's 3 12 mils. All right, so I'm going to start with this one here closest to the front. Now I wanted to use an impact to get that off, although I don't think I could sneak it in here up against this fender liner, and I don't feel like taking this fender liner off just to be lazy and use an impact. So I'll use an impact on those two. For this one right here, I'm just going to use a socket wrench
You can use any tool of your choice, whatever you prefer, impact, socket wrench, whatever you choose, guys. So let's go ahead and get this thing broken free. Yep, there we go. Got it going with this socket wrench here. All right, go ahead and get this thing off here. Knocking my pan all over. All right, feels like she's coming on out. So this one should be good. Then we'll fire out our 2 remainders here on the right side of it, if we're looking directly at it. And then we'll have this filter free. There we go. All right, guys, so we're gonna get these other 2 here. On the bottom one here, 12 mil. Out. And then we got the top one. Out. All right, guys, filter is free. Should be able to go ahead and grab her. And there it is, guys. Old filter off. All right, so let's go ahead and get the new one on. All right, so here's a little old versus new action here. So that is the old filter. There's a new one. You can see they are identical. All right, guys, so here is the part number. This is an OEM Nissan filter. So it's going to be 31726-1XE0A. All right, so there is the filter, guys. Good to go. Let's get this thing installed. All right, guys, so I cleaned up a bit in there. So just put some degreaser and wiped it down. Probably going to get a little bit of fluid still dripping, but you know, that is to be expected. So what we're going to do is guide our filter back in. All right, so I'm going to guide this guy in here, and I'm just going to start this bottom bolt here in the closer to the rear corner. All right, so got that thing started and going in. Just going to get it going a hair. All right, so that's started. I'm gonna go ahead and get the one on the other side closest to the front started. So I'm gonna hold it up and do the other one. All right, guys, I got this one going now too. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that thing threaded in a little bit by hand here. So now get our last one here on the top end, and then we're just gonna fire all those in and snug them down. All right. All right, guys, I got all those started. So what I'm going to do is just fire them in and snug them down. All right, nothing crazy. Just going to sit that up straight as it's intended to be. And then we're just going to lock them in with the impact on those 2. Keep in mind on the front one, I could not sneak my impact in there, so I'm going to have to do it with a socket wrench. No big deal, though. I'm just going to get it snug. So let me go ahead and get that one going here. And I'm right there. And that thing is snug, guys. Good to go. Feels really good. Okay, so now we can go ahead and get our hoses back onto the recording spot, so it's quite obvious which one goes where. Just slide it right back into position here. All right, so I got the top one on, this bottom one. Jeez. All right, there we go. We got both of those on, guys. So now we just got to get our clamps back into place. All right, now when it comes to clamps, if you notice, there is an indentation here on the hose where the original clamp was clamped. All right, you do want to get it back in those indentations for the best possible secure connection, because if you just randomly put it back on, there is a chance it can leak. Is it going to 100%? Not necessarily. You can definitely do it successfully and get it in another position, but I would suggest getting it back into its original indentation for best possible results. So that is what I'm going to be aiming for. So let me go ahead and grab this one here. Kind of put it back a little too far, but we're going to get it pulled back forward here. All right. Get it down the body here. And I'm going to grab my other pliers here, the little thicker ones. And I'm going to be shooting to get this right back where it was, guys. So all right, guys, right there. All right, so I got that locked back in its original location. This one's going to be a little bit harder here because it was facing the opposite way, you know, upwards basically. If you remember, I did move it with my hand to get it back essentially how it belongs. See if I can get this thing going here. All right. Just be careful and tread very lightly, guys. Almost there with this one. I can see where the marking is from this opening in that triangle, and I think I got it. Just gotta move it over a hair, slightest hair. All right, guys, got it. All right, that thing is on there pretty tight, back in its orientation. So both of those are back on, and that means our external filter is 100% good to go, installed, and we are ready for fluid. So you can go ahead and grab your splash guard, get it back lined up here so we can get this thing installed. All right, so this thing is definitely seen better days, as has the clips like I mentioned, but all right, guys, so I got that back in there. I'm just going to put the rest of the clips in, and we'll be good to go. All right, guys, got that panel back in the best I could, considering it has missing clips and it's not in the best condition. So we're good to go. That is back on. We're going to go ahead and put the wheel back on, and then we're going to go ahead and get into filling up the fluid, guys. So we are all but done. Let's go ahead and get the fluid in. All right, guys, wheel is back on. Time to come back under the hood. Okay, so we are ready for new fluid. Okay, so took the dipstick out, just put a funnel in here. This is where we're going to be refilling from. We lost about 5 quarts, maybe a hair over, 5.5 maybe at the most. Got a little bit in there from the filters and the pan, but I would say maybe 5 to 5.5 is what we lost. I'm going to start with adding 5 quarts. It was maybe a splash overfilled, maybe just a hair, because we were getting it on the higher part of the dipstick. So was kind of reading up in here almost when I checked it initially. So I'm going to start with putting in 5, and we're going to see where we're at. So NS2 fluid is what you want. Okay, Nissan NS2. All right, and as you can see right under the hood, it's what it recommends. Use only Nissan CVT Fluid NS2. NS2. You look at the factory service manual, it outlines NS2. So NS2 Nissan Fluid is what we're going to be pouring up in here. So let's fill this thing up. All right, guys, we're just going to pour these in, and we'll get it going here. All right, guys, we got that filled up, 5 quarts. I'm just going to do a quick gauge to see where we're at. Yes, this needs to be in the specific temperature range to get an accurate reading, and it correspond with the reading we took beforehand, but I'm just doing this for shits and giggles. And looks like we got a decent amount of fluid, and it's coming up to about where it was before, even just before we run it, guys. So looks like we got some fluid on here. All right, looks pretty good. You can see it. So about right there. We're going to leave it like this. We're not locking this in yet. That's going to be the last step. We'll be locking that in. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start this thing up. I'm going to monitor the temperature. All right, so we're just going to start it up. It's still on jacks. I want to evaluate the oil pan as it's running. I want to look at the filter. I want to make sure we have no leaks. So I'm just going to start this up, see where the temperature is. We're going to let it run for a little bit, make sure we have no leaks, and then we're going to check the fluid in the corresponding temperature as outlined by Nissan, guys. All right, so let's start this bad boy up. All right, guys, just fired it up. It's been running for about 1 minute. I was connecting the Bluetooth here to the car scanner app. So we are currently at 95 degrees, which makes sense because obviously the fluid was cold. It's been, you know, it's probably about 80 something degrees out right now, and it's been running for a couple minutes now. So this looks to be perfectly accurate. We can see it climbing up slowly. We're now at 96. So what we're going to do is let this run for probably about 5 minutes. I'll see what the temperature gets to, and depending on where it's at, we might have to take it for a drive to warm it up to that, 149 range to check the fluid. But as of now, we're just going to let this warm up. I'm going to keep an eye under the hood and at our filter and at our pan. Just want to make sure that everything looks good and we have no leaks. So we're going to let this run for a few. We'll keep an eye out for leaks, and we'll see where we're at. All right, guys, we've been running probably for about 10 minutes now, so currently at 130. All right, haven't driven it, haven't done anything. Checked under here a few times. We're looking good as far as everything that we replaced and that we did. So if we're looking at the pan, all right, no leaking around our gasket edge there. Everything looks nice and dry. Get over to the drain plug. All good, no leaking. All right, we come up into our filter. All right, got no leaks coming in there, nothing dripping down, everything is dry. Everything is looking good, how it's supposed to look. So probably 10, 11, maybe even 12 minutes in, guys. This is looking really good. I don't believe that we're gonna have any leaks. I mean, if it was leaking, probably be leaking already. It's pretty warmed up. As you saw, it's already above the 122 range. We're at 130. So we're just gonna let this get to 149. We'll check the fluid, see where it's at, and then we'll adjust accordingly if we need to, guys. But so far, so good. Everything looks dry, good to go. So we'll let this run a little bit longer and see where we're at. All right, guys, after running for a bit, we're at 149. All right, so what I'm gonna do is run this through the gears real quick. I didn't even have to take this on a drive. Just gonna go like 5 seconds between each gear. All right, just wanna make sure we feel good. Feels really good, smoothly going into gear. One more time. All right, all good, guys. We're at 149. Let's go check the fluid. All right, guys, we just crossed over from 149 to 150, but we are good. Let's check this and see where it's at. And it's got a little bit of fluid on there. Might be a hair low. Yeah, it's a hair low, guys. So you can see it's really just coming up about to that first notch. All right, so we lost a little bit more than 5 quarts, so I'm gonna pour a little bit more fluid in here and then we'll recheck. All right, guys, I probably put about almost a half quart more in, maybe not quite. Yeah, we're at a way better level here, so we're in that cross-hatched pattern. You can see I'm gonna put a splash more in there, but looks really good, guys. That's about where we want it. Let me put a hair more in and we'll recheck. All right, guys, I just put a bit more fluid in there, not much at all, maybe like 1/8 of a quart. And we're looking pretty good, guys. It's about right there above the heated cross-hatched rectangle. I'm gonna do it one more time here. Yeah, man, it's looking pretty good, guys. So it's right in that cross-hatched range, which is where it should be. Not quite as high, it's not touching this bent area like it was prior, but in my opinion, I think it might have been a hair overfilled. So we're like right before touching that. All right, guys, so not bad at all. If you're done with it, you can go ahead, lock it back in. If not, you want to check it one more time. Make sure you keep it at a 180 position so you don't lock it back in. But fluid looks good, guys. It's been running for a while now, especially that I've got it to the temperature to get the fluid checked. So we check one more time for leaks here. This is looking really good, guys. See no leaking from anywhere. I don't see anything coming from the drain plug. All right, nothing from the edge here of where the mating surface is of the gasket. Filter dry as a bone. Good to go, guys. So everything is looking really good here. What I'm gonna do is take this on a quick drive around the block just to make sure it feels good. I did drive it prior, so I know how it should feel, so I'm sure you'll know how it should feel as well. So take it for a quick ride, make sure everything's good. That's what I'm about to do. So we'll go on a quick ride, make sure this thing is 100%, and then we have officially done a full CVT service on this Maxima, guys. All right, guys, drive was successful. Pulling back in the driveway, all good. This thing feels great. So what we're going to do now is just review a few things about CVTs, you know, fluid life, when you should do it, all that fun stuff, guys. So let's get into it. All right, so as I've mentioned a few times throughout this video, I'm going to touch base on CVT maintenance. Okay, so that's everything from, should I change my transmission fluid? It's been 150,000 miles, to what a CVT maintenance schedule should look like.
all the above. Okay, now first thing, what should a CVT maintenance schedule look like? In my opinion, it should be every 30K. Okay, there's a lot of mixed opinions on this, and this stems from when these transmissions came out. Really, the dealer and Nissan and they all said it's a lifetime fluid. Like, oh, you don't have to change the fluid, it's good to go. As time has progressed and we've started dissecting these transmissions and digging deeper into fluid condition, and people really testing out fluids from studying intervals and things like that, we've come to realize this fluid is not lifetime. Okay, I don't care what the dealer says, I don't care what Nissan says, it's not lifetime. Now, as far as how to go about maintaining it, there's tons of opinions, but it really just comes down to replace the fluid. Okay, now how often should you do it? As I said, different opinions. In my opinion, I suggest every 30K. And there's multiple reasons I suggest every 30K. For example, it says to inspect the fluid every 30K, okay? So they're not telling you to replace it, but they're suggesting to inspect the fluid every 30K. So they already kind of hinted at 30K intervals just from them suggesting to inspect the fluid. Okay, now there are many other YouTube channels out there that would suggest the same. Just one, for example, a pretty big one is Car Wizard. He has a CVT video that is on a cube, and he showcased a 20,000 mile interval of how deteriorated the fluid and dark it got in a 20,000 mile interval. Okay, so he suggested 30, 40, 50K in that video as well. So that's from a very experienced mechanic suggesting to get the fluid out as frequently as possible. So every 30K is what I would suggest. As far as the filters, it's really up to you. From my experience, it doesn't seem as the fluid I've seen from CVTs gets quite as dirty as that cube did in his video. He pulled the filter and the fluid at 20,000, and it was pretty dirty. So when you do your first change, you could kind of get a gauge of how dirty your fluid is, and maybe you can make a decision from that. But here's how I would suggest the interval should look like. It should be from 0 miles, 30K, fluid change, 60K, fluid change, 90K, a fluid and filter change, 120, fluid change, 150, fluid change, 180, another filter and fluid change. Okay, so that is my opinion on what a CVT maintenance schedule should look like for these cars. Okay, if it makes you feel better and you want to change the filter or the external filter every 30K, you want to do the filters every 30K, be my guest. It's nothing wrong with doing that. You're not going to harm the car by replacing the filters. But I think if you stay on top of these fluid changes, you could get away without doing the filters every fluid change, and that's just my opinion. Okay, so now that suggestion is also a bit subjective to the condition of the transmission. If the fluid has always been changed on time, those things would play a role and factor in how often you should do that as well. But if you've stayed on top of it, that is how an ideal maintenance schedule should look like. Now, I will touch base on my fluid has never been changed. I'm at 150K, and I don't know if it's ever been changed or it's never been changed. Should I change the fluid? So I've answered this in my other CVT video. I have a pretty big CVT video for Altimas on my channel, and there's a lot of discussion of that in the comments. And initially, I really recommended against it just off my knowledge based off of traditional automatic transmissions. The clutch fibers just kind of helps keep the transmission sealed, and sometimes by replacing the fluid, it will flush out all those seals from the fibrous material that the clutch left behind, and it can start causing leaks internally in the transmission, and it can fail and yada yada. CVTs aren't set up that way. They don't have fibrous clutch material because they are belts basically spinning constantly. That's what it is. That's how a CVT works. So it doesn't create that same effect that it would in a traditional transmission. So it seems as though replacing the fluid is actually extremely beneficial and should really never be a bad thing, despite what the mileage is. You could be 100,000 miles and you haven't changed it, and it still should be beneficial because the goal is to get the burnt fluid out. The CVT fluid gets dirty quick, it gets burnt over time, and obviously the more miles are on it, the more broken down the fluid is going to be. So CVTs like fresh fluid, and having that old dark broken down fluid in there puts it at more risk. So I've seen a couple of transmission CVT videos on YouTube from like transmission shops kind of suggesting this. You know, you'll come across it just in some discussions like on Reddit and forums and things like that if you do a little bit of searching on CVT. So it seems as though they really aren't, you know, negatively affected from replacing the fluid. So mileage is irrelevant. If it's been 120, 140, 160K and the fluid's never been replaced, you really shouldn't have an issue replacing the fluid, because it seems that they're more prone to failing without having maintenance. Like, you know, you just went off of the dealer when they told you it was a lifetime fluid. All right, so that is my opinion on the Nissan CVT and what a schedule should look like, and should I change my fluid, okay? I'm sure there's going to be some Nissan experts in the comments that would suggest otherwise. And I mean, everybody's got their opinion. Like I said, the dealer is going to tell you it's lifetime. Nissan might tell you it's lifetime. You might get different opinions from different dealers. You go to your local mechanic, he'll tell you one thing. You Google it, you know, they'll tell you one thing. There's a ton of different opinions. But it seems like the general consensus from people who've dealt with these transmissions is replace the fluid. Mileage irrelevant, get in there and replace the fluid. All right, so that is my take on should you and when you should replace your CVT fluid in your Maxima, guys. So I hope this helped with maintaining and showing you how to replace your fluid and your filters on your 7th gen Maxima. Make sure you stay tuned, because you never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. And until next time, guys.